Coming to Rahway at the Union County Performing Arts Center this Saturday night, it's the Hitmen. I think this is just a great show. And the guy who started the band, Lee Shapiro, is our guest this morning at 105.5 WDHA here on All Mixed Up. Lee, good morning and welcome.
Hey, man, it's a pleasure to be here. Absolutely.
So tell me how the Hitmen came about.
It's a kind of a cool story. Back when, uh, first of all, I was one of the Four Seasons with Frankie Valli. We did Oh What a Night and Swearing to God. And I was there right at the right time. We made all of those great hit records for the second coming of the group. Well, at the time, it was like 40 or 38 years, but now it's been 50 years, and I'm still friends with Frankie. And I went to a recording session during the Jersey Boys Tony year. I forget which one it was. But meanwhile, and I said, because I've maintained a relationship with Frankie to this day, 50 years of friendship. And I said, there's a lot of groups out there doing the Jersey Boys thing and the Seasons thing. It's very popular to do tributes. I said, but people have been asking me, I said to Frankie, about getting some of the guys together and actually going back and doing this. I hadn't been on the road in decades. And he said, Lee, honestly, we limit the songs that a lot of the tribute bands can do about the Four Seasons because we don't want them to detract from Jersey Boys, which was still gaining amazing traction. He said, but you, Lee, you were one of the Four Seasons, so you could do whatever the heck you want. He says, it's biographical. And at that moment, I called up who has now passed, the late Don Ciccone, who was one of the guys with me, and Jerry Polci, who sang Oh What a Night. And the three of us put some guys around us. And we went and did this first show in 2010 or 11, maybe 2011. And it was at BB King's that used to be in Times Square in New York City. It's not there now, I don't believe. But meanwhile, we did a whopping 35 people. Oh, yeah, they were thrilled with us. But we did a quality show, and we were really the guys. And we did for basically Frankie's show and a little Tommy James, because I was in that band for a while too, as was Don. But the bottom line is, of those 30 odd people, two of them were Ron Gartner and Fran Heller, the managing partners and owners of Bicoastal Productions, the agency. And he said, I think you guys are really something. I want to take you on, blah, blah, blah. And I said, I'll tell you what, this came from my dad, because he had said, never do anything in business with someone who doesn't want it as much as you do. You don't want to be the little pea in the big pod. So I said to him, I'll tell you what. And I had no idea that he was for real or not for real. I said, why don't you try to get us work for 6 months? And at the end of the 6 months, if we've worked, then I'll sign. And we did. And I signed. And it's been 13 years. And now we have the Hitmen, who, of course, are coming to Rahway, and we can't wait for that. And it's kind of offshoots as well. It's like the Hitmen of Country are now. And these are the real guys who played with the celebrities, the legends.
You mentioned the Four Seasons, and I know you were in on the second act, if you will, of the band. I
Yes.
think unless you're from this area and of a certain age, I don't think people realize how big the Four Seasons were in the 1960s. I mean, even before the Beatles hit, Lee, and I know you know this. I mean, they had what, 3 number one hits and at least one, if not two more, that broke into the top 5. They were massive here, especially from
Yes.
New Jersey.
Yes. And I'll tell you something else. The top 10 that you're referring to were usually for years were split between 4 groups. The English Invasion, Beatles,
Mm-hmm.
obviously. The Four Seasons, the Beach Boys, and the Motown Group. That was what you heard. That's what there was. They dominated. It's been the only person who's done it since then, decades and decades, is Taylor Swift.
Mm-hmm.
Because she's the new icon. And people say, "Oh, I don't know her tunes." I say, "She's not writing her tunes for you, buddy."
Right. That's right.
When was the last time you bought records? When was the last time you downloaded a stream? So they don't. And honestly, when I was of age, when I was in my 20s with Frankie, we weren't making "Oh What a Night" for my parents. We were making it for people our own age in our 20s. Although Frankie's 20 years my senior. When I met him, I was 19. And I'm 70. and he's still out there doing it. And he's 90 this year.
I'll tell you a personal aside with regard to the Four Seasons. This is a little over 20 years ago. I'm working for the Newark Bears, and I'm on the field at Riverfront Stadium, and there's a guy out in the outfield, and we're shagging fly balls, and we start a conversation, and I'm looking at him going, boy, you look familiar, and I can't quite place him. Turns around, it was Nick Massey's son. Nick, of course, one of the
The
Four
coach,
Seasons. He
Nicky,
looked identical to his
identical.
dad. Oh my
Yes.
gosh, Lee, it was
Yeah,
amazing.
yeah, you're right. And I had these guys were street corner tough guys, except for Gaudio, who I replaced. But the other guys, and they had no, they weren't trying to be something else. That's who they were. And Nick Massey was the guy that originally, before Gaudio got way involved, when he was just the new guy who wrote these great songs. Massey was the creator of that voicing, if you will, of the background vocals. Most people would, for musicians, most people would group background vocals in, first, third, fifth, and they sing
Hmm.
parallel harmonies. Bee Gees did that a lot, parallel harmonies. Uh, the Four Seasons did not have that. They had the third on the bottom, then a space, then the one, then the five, and by opening it up, you sounded like the Four Seasons. Well, I knew that. I also knew that Frankie Valli, his leads were always double tracked on every song. That was the sound. So a lot of the tribute bands didn't know that, but we knew that. So when we would perform as the Hitmen with the Seasons sound, it was all based on Massey's voicings. And he, passed away long before I could even thank him. But I stood in the studio with him and learned the secret. And so our stuff, the Hitmen, early Hitmen stuff, it sounded like the Four Seasons because I knew what they were doing, and it was just a pleasure to be a disciple of that, if you know. And Charlie Colello, another amazing name, who orchestrated and arranged pretty much every hit that the Four Seasons ever had, and
And
then
the
went on to.
musicians that you have now, they've played with just about everybody. I mean, it was probably 69 or 70 when I started looking up, boy, who is that playing on that album? And you
Yeah,
start seeing
yeah.
the same names like Leland Sklar or
Oh,
Jim Gordon and things like that. Like they were on everything. And the band that you've put together for this, Lee, is really incredible.
well, thank you, and I'm just so thrilled to have been able to get them. But we have people uh, who have played with everybody. I mean, our guitarist Mark Newman has played with people who were in Derek and the Dominoes. He played with John Oates from Hall and Oates. Steve Murphy, oh my goodness, Alan Parsons Project. Everybody on the Happy Together tour, he played for all of those people. Everybody who was ever happy and together, he he was their drummer. But all the guys have credits, from Tommy James to Wings to the Hooters. Matter of fact, Tommy Williams, our guitarist and keyboard player, does both beautifully, is one of the Hooters as
Hmm.
well. So we have the real guys who know how these records were made, who know, and when they play it, again, I don't want to sound like an ad, but it's an ad. They play it like you remember it. You hear it, it's like, little gasp. Oh, I know that. In the first two bars, you'll know it. It's not, it's authentic classic rock. That's what we pride ourselves on.
And the
And
vocals are particularly strong too.
oh, I am so blessed. First of all, Steve Murphy is a savant. He's the band leader. He's the drummer, which he plays like Neil Peart, and he sings. It's amazing, all at the same time. Don't ask him what he had for breakfast yesterday, but as far as his musicality is quite unbelievable. And honestly, most audiences, people educated like you and I, we're listening. Wow, great bass part. That's super. Most audiences want to hear two things: the melody and the harmony. And if that happens, they're having the experience. If the vocals are not right, it doesn't matter how you're playing. The vocals are what pop music, especially of our era, was about. You heard the words and the vocals. And I'm not putting down music that isn't that way, but for us, we wanted to hear the song. You know what I mean? And all of the tunes, which is particularly fun, that the guys play are the ones that have the sing-along choruses, like "Don't Stop Believing," like that kind of stuff. And Steve has played with members of Journey, and so you can see the crowd waiting for their moment. And it feels like the first time.
It's songs that were meant to be sung in an arena.
Thank you, sir. And I'll tell you something else. This is something I used to say when I was performing with the band on stage, and I would say that our people, our baby boomers, we have two incredible distinctions. And I always said, one, we had the best music, and of course the audience would love that. But the other was, and I still feel this way, and I think you'll agree, we're the first generation of senior citizens that did not grow old. And it's due to rock and roll. Because we loved rock and roll in the 60s and in the 70s and in the 80s, and we still love it. And it's still here.
Hey, listen, Danny and the Juniors back in the 50s, rock and roll is here to stay. It'll never die. I mean,
And it hasn't. And it's not gone. And it's the only, other than classical music, I don't think there's another style that people who weren't alive know the songs. Like my daughter knows Abbey Road, and she was not here when Abbey Road was. Matter of fact, I wasn't. I was
Right.
in the 60s. I was like 15 when Abbey Road came out.
You
But
made a reference earlier in the interview, and I did want to touch on it. Tell me about Hitmen Country.
Hitman Country is modeled from the Hitmen. The Hitmen are guys who played with classic rock legends. The Hitmen of Country, they played with, well, for instance, our keyboard player, Doug Carter, is currently Lee Greenwood's musical director. We've got Alabama's guitar player. We've got the bass player who played with Winona. We have real guys, and they come out, and when they do those tunes, both shows are made up of songs from the associations that the band members had. So if you hear a song in a Hitman concert or at a Hitman of Country concert, they know these people. They've played with them. They have the secrets, and it sounds unbelievable. And again, the vocals. But these are the real, and they're based in Nashville, of course, and it's a blast.
You can check out the Hitmen this Saturday night. Tickets are available at UCPAC.org. It's the Union County Performing Arts Center in Rahway, and all things the Hitmen on their website, thehitmenlive.com. Lee Shapiro, thank you so much, founder of the Hitmen. I really appreciate your time this morning, and I hope the show is great this coming Saturday night.
Me too, but you know what, Melly, man, it's an honor to be playing for people that listened to you 50 years ago. In other words, they can go see anybody, and when they come to the Hitmen, it's honestly like seeing 10 classic rock legends all at the same time, because each song brings back another. I remember where I was. Oh, I remember that sounds like when I graduated. It's that kind of a moment, and it's a beautiful thing. And you, sir, are a star in your own right, and I thank you for having me on. And I know about your baseball past, and I know about how legendary you are at WDHA, and I'm honored to be with you today, sir.
Well, Lee, thank you very much. I appreciate the kind words, and again, continued success with the Hitmen.
Thank you. Have a wonderful, wonderful day, and we hope to see you soon.